Right, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Golden Goal Fantasy Football Podcast. Unfortunately, just me tonight. Sam's busy tonight. But yeah, hoping I can alleviate a bit of international break boredom with a cheeky little Sky podcast. Bit of a break from the usual routine of going through each game week and looking at the fixtures because we ain't got any fixtures this weekend. I thought I'd go over three players that I think are pretty much essential for the run into the end of the season, and three sort of dark horses that I think are going under the radar but will score well towards the end of the season. So, I hope you find this somewhat insightful. I never claim to be a complete fantasy football guru or expert, but yeah, hopefully some of the knowledge I'm about to pass on is useful to you. So first up on my essential players for the run-in, to some this is going to be pretty obvious, but I just think you've got to have Nick Pope, certainly for the period of the 6th to the 21st of April, right? So he's got 2 single game days of Everton and Southampton. In between those 2 games, he's got Norwich and West Ham. So I think for that run of at least 4 fixtures, you might want to avoid him against Man City because Man City usually give Burnley a bit of a drubbing. But against Everton and Southampton, to me, they just feel like prime Nick Pope, single game day captaincy, 2018 20-pointer, you know. Everton, forgive the pun, but they don't seem to be able to score for toffee. So, although they did score against Newcastle, didn't they? When I had the Bravka in goal, which was pretty heartbreaking to be honest. But yeah, you'd fancy them to do quite well against Everton. And usually when Burnley keep a clean sheet, Nick Pope gets saves bonus and sometimes a cheeky man of the match as well. So yeah, hopefully some good points in that one. And the same for the Southampton game, right? I'd say Southampton are definitely a bit better than Everton, but they never seem to completely thrash teams. I think Southampton genuinely, when they do score, generally score 1 or 2 goals a game, nothing too much more than that. So yeah, it's a game that you'd think Burnley might keep a clean sheet in, but at minimum you get a bit of saves bonus from Pope. And I still feel like on the night, maybe Ward-Prowse. You know, it's a toss-up really between Pope and Ward-Prowse, I'd say, is the best captain. But yeah, I really do think Nick Pope is a good option for coming up. I think that's pretty obvious really to most, but yeah, just to re-infuse that thought in your heads that Nick Pope's a good option. So next up, we got my guy Bukayo Saka. First game back for Arsenal is a game against Crystal Palace. And it's a single game day, so you're going to need a captain. And yeah, I was raving about him on previous podcasts, and I brought him in ahead of the Watford game, and he absolutely smashed it. It's a bit of a disappointment against Liverpool, but Liverpool if you blank against Liverpool, I don't think you can be too upset. So I'm not really thinking too much about that game. And yeah, came away with a goal against Villa and believe man of the match as well. You're going to need an Arsenal player for the 4th of April against Palace. Looks like Ramsdale's injured. Don't know how serious it is. I'm actually hoping he's out because I don't own him, and I'd be a bit worried if I didn't own Ramsdale for that one. Because I think between Saka and Ramsdale, they'll both be quite highly captained. But for me, I just think Saka is probably the best Arsenal captain at the moment. I think I said this on a previous pod, but just for me, I think Arsenal have gone through a bit of a transition recently where I'd say at least at the start of the season and probably at the midpoint, you'd opt for their defenders ahead of their attacking assets. But yeah, they just seem to have found some proper fluidity going forward, and they've got some really exciting players. Likes of Martinelli, Odegaard, Smith Rowe and Saka. Obviously, there's a bit of rotation there, but Saka seems to be the most nailed of all of them, along with Odegaard, I'd say. So yeah, I just can't look beyond Saka. He's been in my team for those 4 games, and yeah, bit of disappointment against Liverpool, but other than that, he's pretty much smashed it for me, and he looks a real threat in pretty much every game he plays. So yeah, Saka's my next pick. And then finally, I've got Jacob Ramsey from Aston Villa. He's not, looking at those recent points, he's not lit the world up, but 5.8 million, he's super cheap, probably the cheapest of all the midfielders that are regularly playing games and actually getting decent points. I mean, he seems to be returning an attacking return every 3 or 4 games, give or take. And he's getting an odd bit of tackle bonus here and there as well. And he does pick up the odd yellow card, but he plays in the centre of midfield, so you kind of expect that. But yeah, I think Jacob Ramsey's a really good asset. And it's not like the kind of guy you'd captain on a single game day or anything, because he doesn't have that upside. But he's the type of player that you could just leave in your team all season. I mean, even if he didn't play a few, I think you can't really expect more for 5.8 million. I really do think he's the value pick of the year, really, alongside Dennis. But Dennis has gone off the ball a little bit, hasn't he? Yeah, I'd say probably one of my biggest regrets at Overhaul, really. I really did strongly consider Ramsey, but I just didn't trust that he was nailed. Maybe I'll get onto this as one of the answers to one of the questions, but I was listening to a Luke Disable podcast earlier in the week, and he was saying that one of the key differentiators at the moment in fantasy football, because everyone's got all the stats to compare players now, but the real differentiator between, I'd say someone that wins the game and someone who doesn't, is the ability to predict how many minutes a player plays. And in some cases, there really is method to it, and I think Luke has managed to nail it with Man City, for example. And I think, perfect example. Those who went with Jacob Ramsey, right, have been absolutely rewarded. And yeah, so if you predicted his expected minutes correctly, you've smashed it. So yeah, Jacob Ramsey, I think going forward is almost essential, really. And look at that ownership as well. I think, apart from Pope, who's probably not very well owned anymore, just because people might have sold him, but Ramsey and Saka are relatively highly owned now, and they are for a reason, because they're scoring well and people want them in their team. So yeah, 3 players that I think are essential there. Hopefully that was useful. And next up, I've gone for 3 players that I think are great picks as well, but are going under the radar a bit more. I wouldn't necessarily call them essential, because I think there are other players in their positions that you could pick. But I just want to give them an honourable mention, because I think they are very good assets. So yeah, first up, we've got probably one of last season's best enablers in Højbjerg. To be completely honest, Spurs really seem to have pulled their finger out recently. I mean, even in the Man United game that they lost, I thought they were arguably the better team if it wasn't for Ronaldo just going mad and getting that hat-trick. And yeah, if you look at his recent 6 games, in that Leeds game, I think he got an assist. But he's either got single or double bonus in every other game. So 5 out of 6 games he's got bonus, and then in the 6th game he got an assist. So he's not blanked for a good few weeks. And looking at those fixtures coming up, you got Newcastle, Villa, Brighton, Brentford. You'd almost fancy him to get bonus in pretty much all of those games as well. So yeah, I think Højbjerg is back, if you like, and I think he's a perfectly decent pick. And like I was saying, I don't think he's gonna, similar to Ramsey, right? I don't think he's going to light the world up. You're not going to get a 10-pointer every week from Højbjerg, but you are going to get 4 or 5 points. And he plays every game for 90 minutes. He's one of Spurs' most important players. So you can always pretty much rely on him to start. And yeah, he seems to be getting 4 or 5 points a game at the moment. So I think he's a really, really smart pick if you've got the moves to get him in. Now, I know I've just spoken about Nick Pope as a really good option for the 2 captaincies, but I can't ignore Alisson at the moment. I mean, look at those recent games. So I think I'm showing there his last 8 or 9 games, and yeah, I did some maths before the pod. So across the last 8 games, Alisson is averaging 10.2 points per game. So yeah, and he's 7.8 million. And he's averaging that high points. I just don't think you can ignore that, how good he's been. We've got Nick Pope for the 2 single game days, but I do think you could go different from Pope. If you picked Alisson and just held him, looking at those recent fixtures, he's got some absolute monster points in him to come. And with Liverpool, I think they'll be fighting for the title right until the bitter end. And Alisson, sometimes Kelleher plays, right? But I mean, it's going to be Alisson right until the end of the season if they're fighting for the title. So, yeah, I just wanted to give him a mention because I think It's probably, over that period of time, I'm not sure there's a Sky asset that scored more points. Yeah, you can quote me if I'm wrong or whatever, but that run is just ridiculous. And yeah, I think he's really going under the radar at the moment, probably for the right reasons, in that Pope is a captaincy option for a couple of games. But yeah, Alisson with those points, very difficult to ignore, and I think he deserved the mention. Yeah, and continuing on with the theme of Liverpool players, I think a few people have been touting Matip on Twitter as well. The Matip of last season, I wouldn't have even have considered him, because I think with him last season, he'd play a couple of games or even just one game, and he'd get an injury. He couldn't even chain like 2 games together. But yeah, this is the run he's just been on. He started 8 of the last 9 games. And in those games that he started, he's averaged 9.5 points per game. So yeah, you'd think that's probably more than Thiago Silva, definitely Lewis Dunk. Just thinking of all the defenders sort of in that price range, I think he's topped all of them so far. And he's only 2.3% owned. So yeah, I just wanted to give those 2 Liverpool boys an honourable mention. As much as it pains me to say it as a United fan, I just think they've been awesome. And yeah, Matip as well. He's been getting forward a lot, like scoring goals and getting a few assists. He's looked really good. And yeah, picking up passing bonus here and there as well alongside Van Dijk. So, and like I was saying with Alisson, Liverpool are going to be playing, right up until the bitter end. There might be a bit of rotation between Matip and Konate, but Joe Gomez just completely appears to be out of favour at the moment. He's only really getting a look in when Trent is not playing. So it looks like Klopp is alternating occasionally between Konate and Matip, but it appears to be only when the opposition have like a proper physical centre forward. So I think he played them against United, I think, just to defend against the pace that United have on the counter. And I think he played Konate up against Antonio as well, just to try and physically match him up a bit more. But yeah, I mean, I think Matip's a really solid pick for the rest of the season, and thought he deserved an honourable mention. So yeah, my 3 are Højbjerg, Alisson and Matip. And yeah, hopefully if you guys pick some of those players, they score you some points towards the end of the season. And finally, I had some questions on Twitter, so thank you, lads. As always, most of you guys are regular watchers and question askers. So yeah, really appreciate all the questions that we get. So Gordon Bell asks me, will I be picking Nick Pope for the upcoming single game day v Everton? And if I go for Pope, what would be the plan to come off him? Who to and when? So I think based on how I've just bigged up Alisson, I think that sort of answers the second question. And yeah, I just think for that period of the time, I'm not massively chasing. I certainly don't need to go against Pope, I don't think. I think Pope is going to be by far the most popular captain in that Everton game. And probably in that Southampton game too. So I think I'll just pick Nick Pope, be safe, and just go with that. But after, like I said, I really do think Alisson is a great option. I'm not quite sure how my team would have to be structured to get Alisson in, because he is like nearly $1 million more than Pope. Excuse me, but yeah, I really do think that that Alisson's a great option for the run in if you can afford him. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. And yeah, our good mate Ben asks us, who are some players that we'd like to see move to the Premier League next season? So he wants to answer this. Oh, he said I can answer it from a fantasy football perspective and just a fan of football as well. And he said, assuming you mentioned Haaland. Oh God, I'm dreading Haaland playing for Man City. That's just going to be a nightmare, isn't it? Do you think he'll be the most expensive player in the game? I'll answer the Haaland one first, actually, with a no. I think Mo Salah, he's not been tip-top after AFCON, but I think if you were to assess from the start of the season, I think Salah's probably been the best player in the world. So I think if Haaland was more expensive in the game than Salah, I'd be quite surprised. So I think Salah's probably going to be the most expensive, and Sky don't tend to value players any more than like 12 million. So I think they'll stick Salah in at about 12, Kane at like 11.8, 11.9, because he hasn't had quite as strong as a season as he did last year. And I think Haaland would be right out there as well. I think 11.5 to 12 million would be how I'd imagine Haaland to be priced. Yeah, the thing is with Haaland, right, as good as he is, I mean, Man City are walking away with the league. Well, they were up until last few weeks, right? But they did it all without a centre forward. And I just think even if they signed Haaland, you couldn't even guarantee that Haaland would play every game. Especially, City have played a good couple of seasons now without a fully fledged centre forward. And I just think that method of play must be so ingrained into those players that, trying to integrate an out-and-out centre forward into that team might be a bit difficult. Almost a bit like Lukaku at Chelsea, right? But I do think Haaland's better than Lukaku, so he'll probably have a better time of it at City. But yeah, just a few comments on Haaland there. And I've written some players down that I'd like to see in the Premier League as well, so I'm going to butcher his name. But there's a defender playing for Barcelona at the moment, Araujo. It looks like he's got a reasonable chance of signing for Man United. And with Barcelona, with their, I think he's out of contract in the summer, and they can't actually afford to pay his wages. I think he's demanding more than Barcelona can afford. However, that's just like, a ploy to get even more money out of Barca. Who knows, right? But it looks like he's got a really good chance of leaving Barca in the summer, and potentially coming to the Premier League. And by all accounts, he looks like an absolutely awesome young prospect. So yeah, Araujo, the defender from Barcelona, is definitely one player that I'm looking at. Another one, I always come back to Jude Bellingham. Like, I'm just so impressed with how he conducts himself, how good he's been at Dortmund. Birmingham retired his shirt number, right? I think it's still a bit of an extreme measure, but I think towards when Bellingham gets to the end of his career, I think Birmingham will be justified in their decision to retire his shirt, because I think Bellingham looks at the real deal, and he'll be at the centre of midfield for that England team for years to come. And yeah, I think it's entirely up to him. I do think he's obviously going to come back to the Premier League. It's just a question of who to. And the terrifying thing for me is I think he probably goes to Liverpool, just because of the problems they've got in midfield at the moment. I think that's probably where the weakness sits in their team. And yeah, I know Tielemans is out of contract for Leicester in the summer as well. That'd be absolutely terrifying if both Tielemans and Bellingham signed for Liverpool, because I think that'd be a formidable midfield. So yeah, I think Bellingham, I'm really excited to him. Well, unless he plays for Liverpool, then I'm less excited. But yeah, Bellingham would be good to see in the Prem. And then finally, I don't know why it didn't happen in the summer. I was quite surprised to see him leave England, to be honest. It might have been like a clause that Chelsea were trying to write in his contract that they couldn't sell him to a rival. But Tammy Abraham, for me, is he's absolutely ripping it up in Italy. And I think he's going under the radar a little bit. I think I saw on Twitter that he broke Battistuta's record for the quickest to 20 goals to play ever for Roma. Yeah, Tammy Abraham beating a record set by Batistuta is pretty ridiculous. And I think I've sent a few tweets about it in the summer. I just think, well, Southampton nailed it with Broja, to be fair. But the likes of Southampton in Brighton that were struggling for centre forwards, I think they should have gone all in on Tammy Abraham. So I just think wherever he goes in the Premier League, as long as you give him service, I think he can score between 10 and 20 goals a season. He's that level of player, and he's already proving it at Roma. And yeah, I'm a bit of a dirty two-club man. So being from Somerset, my family roots are supporting Bristol City. And Bristol City was a team that he was loaned out from Chelsea right at the beginning of his career. And went to a few Bristol City games that season, and he was probably by far the best player I've ever seen in that stadium. He just looks such a natural centre forward. Like, he had like a sixth sense of where the goal was. I mean, he wasn't particularly bulky at the time, but the guy's like 6'5", 6'6". He's not slow. He looked pretty agile. Like, he's got all the qualities you'd want from a centre forward. And yeah, I was just really surprised that he didn't sign for a Premier League team in the summer. And he's a player that I'd be really excited to see come back, because I think he could. Well, I think he could probably do a better job than Lukaku, to be honest. I think it's a shame that Chelsea sold him, and they're probably regretting it, because I think he's pretty much on level par with Lukaku, to be honest. Okay, I went on for a bit then. Hopefully I didn't bore the life out of you. And yeah, Mitch asks us, what back five would you want from now until the end of the season? And he's just gone through some players that he's going to have. To be honest, Mitch, looking at those names, I don't think I can argue with you, to be honest. He's gone Cancelo, Laporte, Van Dijk, Thiago Silva, and Rudiger/Matip. And yeah, he's saying Silva was a regretful transfer. I also brought in Silva, and then when he didn't play, I brought in Rudiger for him. So, yeah, I'd say it was a pretty regretful transfer for me as well. But he got the points when we brought him in, I suppose. I mean, to be honest, I can't argue with that. Laporte and Cancelo, for me, I've kept them all throughout from overhaul. I know a few at least sold Laporte, and I know a few sold Cancelo as well, just for fixture gains and the fact that he might have been ill. But I just think Man City looks so good, and it's quite nice to have, double Man City defence at the moment. I think is a bit of a differential. And when they pass the ball as much as they do and keeping as many clean sheets as they are, I just think they're such great options and such great value as well. I mean, Laporte's 9.1 million, similar price to the likes of Rudiger and Silva, and I just think you get so much value out of him. Then he's named Van Dijk. I think other than Ramsey, one of the decisions that I regret at overhaul was picking Trent over Van Dijk. I sort of got I don't know, I'm still sold on it, right, that Trent has got an absolute mega haul in him towards the end of the season. And that was my reason for picking him over Van Dijk. But to be completely honest, there's pretty much nothing to choose between them except for the price, and Van Dijk comes in cheaper. So out of the two, if I could go back, I'd have picked Van Dijk. So yeah, I can't argue with that. He's put Thiago Silva in there, which I probably could argue with. And he said Rudiger/Matip. To be completely honest, I think if you replace Thiago Silva with Matip and then just have Rudiger alongside, my opinion, that's the best back five in the game at the moment. I don't think you can get much better than sort of, let's say, Laporte, Cancelo, Van Dijk, Matip, Rudiger, and then Nick Pope or Alisson in goal is probably the best back line in the game at the moment. So that's it. Questions all answered. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that one. Bit different being on my own, so hopefully you didn't get bored of my voice and hear me chat shit for the last 22 minutes and 30 seconds. And yeah, if you liked what you saw, give us a like. Sam will be back next week, and we might even be joined by an extra special guest again. So keep tuned in for that. And yeah, like I said, if you enjoyed what you saw, leave us a like rating and and subscribe to our channel as well. And we'll be back next week with a proper game week preview. Cheers.